Hi, it's Rich here. Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you haven't heard, AG1 is a comprehensive and convenient blend of over 70 high-quality ingredients, and it's so easy to drink. The first thing I do when I get up in the morning is add a scoop of AG1 to some cold water, give it a shake and drink. It's as easy as that, and it's now part of my morning ritual. As the new year gets underway, I like the fact that AG1 is one of the easiest things I can do for my health. AG1 contains vitamins and nutrients to support my immune system and key minerals and natural ingredients to help me maintain my energy levels and focus. As AG1 is a more-in-one supplement, it's so much simpler than stocking up on lots of different types of vitamins and supplements, and a really easy way to support a healthier lifestyle, especially as we're coming out of the gluttony of Christmas. 1 scoop of AG1 per day supports energy, digestive regularity, immune defence and a healthy mood, so I'll be ready to take on whatever 2025 has in store for me. Looking to give AG1 a shot? Subscribe now and get a free bottle of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription. Go to drinkag1.com/1865 and get started today. That's drinkag1.com/1865.
Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at AmericanExpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
Behind those cozy nights at home, thousands of employees at BP go to work every day. People producing more U.S. natural gas. People building grid-scale solar capacity. People turning landfill waste gas into pipeline-quality renewable natural gas. And people delivering all of that power where it's needed. They're part of the more than 300,000 jobs BP supports across the country. Learn more at bp.com/investing in America.
Hello there and Happy New Year to all listeners. Welcome to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, and a sort of Friday 5 this week. We are recording this on Friday the 3rd of January, but aware of the fact that you won't be listening to this until at least the next day. So a bit of weekend listening before Forest play Wolverhampton Wanderers on Monday night. In just a second, we'll go over to Jamie at the news desk, but first of all, Happy New Year to you, Maradona of the Midlands. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you, and Happy New Year to you and all of our millions of listeners.
Yes, indeed. And did you have a good Christmas break? We'll obviously come on to some of the stories later, but the league table made good viewing, didn't it, at the turn of the year?
It did. It's very odd to sort of just be winning every single week, just having that constant sort of snowball of joy just rolling down the hill. It's uncharted territory. I'm just really I'm more used to football ruining Christmas. So for this to be happening is tremendous fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And I appreciate the seasonal and meteorological references there as the cold snap hits the UK. So without any further ado, let's go over and let's hear the latest stories.
Hi, this is Jamie Martin with this week's top 5 Forest stories from the 1865 news desk. Now, the headline to this week's news: Forest have started the new year in 2nd place. Now, times are good for Nottingham Forest fans. After a super start to the season, the Reds find themselves 2nd place in the Premier League. Forest now sit in 2nd, well, they did sit in 2nd in the new year with 37 points, 5 more points than they amassed in the entirety of last season, while only taking them 19 games. Now, last weekend's 2-0 victory of Everton kept them in 2nd for the new year, but Arsenal's win against Brentford has meant the Reds dropped to 3rd. Nonetheless, starting 2025 in 2nd and with a 5-game win streak, Forest are on fire. Good times at the City Ground. Now, the second piece of news this week: Evangelos Marinakis has cleared millions in club debt. In Club Financials news, the club's owner, Evangelos Marinakis, has further pledged his commitment to the club, allowing new shares and clearing huge sums of debt. An update from Companies House this week confirmed that the club's owner had allotted shares worth £82,155,056, clearing huge amounts of debt. The owner has therefore allotted over 8 billion shares priced at a penny each, a huge move from the owner. Now, with new associated party transaction, or as they're known, APT rules, coming in the next fortnight, this is a positive move. New rules mean loans from the owners of the club, shareholder loans as they're known, will no longer be interest-free. By clearing such debts, Forest won't have to pay as much interest on such debts. So good news there in relation to club finances. Now, the third piece of news this week. The club revealed that they had hired a new staff addition, this time a new CEO, with former Olympiakos and Roma CEO Lina Suluku joining the top brass at the City Ground. After 2 years with no CEO, the club confirmed the appointment of Greek sports law and management specialist Lina Suluku, replacing former CEO Dane Murphy, who was sacked 2 years ago. She joins the club with huge amounts of experience and qualification in sports law and with success in sports management with Olympiakos. While her time at Roma wasn't so successful in the end, club FFP issues alongside other internal hurdles made her position difficult from the start. She'll start her Nottingham Forest career on January 5th, 2025. Now, the fourth piece of the news this week, the women's team will resume their season very soon. After a brief winter break, the Nottingham Forest women's side is set to resume their season. The ladies, who are at the top of the Women's National League North, will return to action this weekend as they face Stourbridge away from home in a 2 p.m. kickoff, and one they'll be looking to take all 3 points from. All of us at the 1865 podcast are wishing the women's side all the best in the coming matches and indeed the rest of their season. And now the final piece of news this week, and it relates to transfer news. The window is officially open and therefore new news is available. As per the ever-reliable Telegraph journalist John Percy, Nottingham Forest are in pursuit of a new striker with Brighton's Evan Ferguson on the list. As per the journalist, Nuno's search for competition/backup to Chris Wood has begun, with the transfer window now open and Evan Ferguson is of interest. Currently unfit, the striker wants to return to action with game time, and currently Brighton cannot offer that. Forest are poised therefore to make a move, with the Seagulls wanting to send him on loan should he leave the club in January. Now, Forest have reached the total number of Premier League loans allowed from other clubs in the division, with Ward-Prowse and Moreno at the club. However, one could return to their parent club to free up a space, or in Moreno's case, Forest fulfil the purchase obligation. Now, the Reds are also looking at Fluminense's young striker, Kaua Elias, according to Tom Colomos, with the youngster on the radar for a permanent Premier League move. Now, at the time of the recording, there has been an update. Nottingham Forest are potentially looking to make Moreno's move permanent and are also looking at potentially losing James Ward-Prowse. It's said that West Ham may be bringing him home from his loan spell at the City Ground. Now, that, though, is the latest from the 1865 news desk. I'm Jamie Martin. Be sure to catch up with me on Twitter, or as it's now known, X, via @I'mJamieMartin. Updates on Nottingham Forest related news throughout the week. Wishing you all a happy new year. Take care. Speak to you soon.
Thank you very much, Jamie. And obviously a really good feel going into the new year, and we'll talk about league positions and transfers a little bit later on. But let's jump straight to Jamie's second story there, Maradona. So Evangelos Marinakis has converted, getting on for £83 million worth of loans into shares. That's obviously something he has done in the past in order to reduce the debt burden of the club. And in addition to that, it's also with the associated party transactions regulations. It's obviously timed with a specific purpose. So what do you make of this gesture by the Forest owner?
I guess it's a necessary one. As he said, that it's something he's done fairly regularly in the past few years. It's almost like an annual occurrence when Kieran Maguire posts a certificate from Companies House showing how many penny shares Marinakis has converted the last bit of debt into. So it's as you say, it's something we've got used to over the years. A director's loan like that, a debt, is not something he'd ever expect the club to pay back, I don't think. The only time he'd maybe get the money back is if he was selling the club for a vast amount of money to some Saudi princes or something. So I think it's just a bookkeeping exercise. I think in his own mind that money would have already gone, left his bank account, probably never to be seen again. So it's just, I guess it's just a way of accounting for it. It's in the books, and keeps us on the right side of the new regulation.
Yeah, and I mean, the one thing for all the question marks that people may have had about the owner in the past, the one thing you've never been able to question is the depth of his pockets when it comes to his football investments. And obviously, we've heard a lot about the multi-club model and the owner, talking about him investing in Vasco da Gama and expanding into other arenas as well. So that seems to be something that he's got a lot of money and he's willing to put his money where his mouth is. And with that in mind, that takes us to our second story of this particular podcast, which is the appointment of a chief executive officer. Now, Lina Suluku, as Jamie mentioned, is somebody who's got a background in law and management. She has also been a head honcho at Olympiacos, where she rose up the ranks, obviously working closely with Evangelos Marinakis, and most recently was the chief executive at Roma in Italy. Now, that didn't end so well. As Jamie mentioned, there were some PSR issues, but I think most notably, it was the sacking of Daniele De Rossi as the coach. And it sounds to me, from the little bit I've read about it, that Suluku basically carried the can for it and said, you know what, that was a mistake. We handled it badly. Therefore, I ought to go. So is that something that is encouraging, if that's the approach that Lina Suluku has to her responsibilities?
I guess so. It's not shirking the responsibilities there. So I suppose that's good. I'll be honest, I hadn't realised we didn't have a chief executive for the past couple of years. There's so many different types of executives at the club now. I always struggle to keep track of them. And I did have an idea that maybe we could ask the club for an interview one day, just to go through the structure, the management structure, just to explain it all. Looking back on it, I suppose it's probably obvious that we didn't have one, given that the former chairman, Tom Cartledge, seemed to be doing a lot of the roles that you might normally associate with a chief executive the last couple of years, or the last year anyway. And so, yeah, I think it has to help to have somebody of her experience and her background, somebody who's worked at the highest level of European football, sort of steeped in football administration as part of her career path. That can only help. And fingers crossed, we'll be a European club again next season. And, maybe we'll be invited to some special. I know the big clubs like to have meetings where they all get together and discuss how to carve up the money pots. And maybe we'll be part of that discussion in the coming years. I think we've got to welcome her. As I say, she's got all the correct experience, and obviously Marinakis was worked with her in the past, so obviously rates her work. Otherwise, he wouldn't have brought her over. So yeah, hopefully she can do great things.
Yeah, and so the initial speculation was that Lina Suluku might be appointed as part of the Marinakis machinery rather than the club machinery to oversee the multi-club model. But as Jamie confirmed, on Sunday she will take up her post as the chief executive officer of Nottingham Forest Football Club. As you said, Forest haven't had a chief exec since Dane Murphy departed the post just over 2 years ago. And that, I think, is interesting, because we have on many occasions, Maradona, speculated about, well, what is the difference between a sporting director, a technical director, a director of football? At the time that Ross Wilson was appointed, the idea was, as we understood it at the time, that that's why we didn't need a chief exec. So something that we speculated on this podcast previously is, do you think the fact that Tom Cartledge, who's a businessman, has vacated the post as chairman, and Nick Randall, who isn't, is now the chair of the club? Do you reckon it's to add a bit of that football administration knowledge into the day-to-day running of the club?
I think so, and I think a club sort of the size of Forest is becoming now needs somebody there. It's a really big operation. It's certainly becoming a big operation. Just the whole commercial arm of it, and sort of the work they're doing within the community and everything else. It's just sort of there's a lot of people involved there, and it's a big organisation. It needs a professional management structure. and somebody working there full time. And I know Tom Cartledge struggled with the time allocation, splitting it between his own company and working for Forest. So having somebody who is full time, whose only focus is Forest, should pay dividends, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, I think it's a very good point that you made there about the fact that, you know, with Suluku having this European experience, being multilingual, knowing how the structures work and everything, when it comes to negotiation, if Forest are in Europe next season, which fingers crossed, may well happen, then actually having somebody at the top table who's established in those circles might well be something that works to the club's benefit. So let's move on to the next story that Jamie brought us, and it's to do with Forest Women. And Forest Women are going to be back in action for the first time in a little while on Sunday. And although the next league match is the one against Stourbridge that Jamie mentioned, actually, the next match is this weekend, and it is at the City Ground, and it is an FA Cup tie against Burnley. And I think it's one of those things whereby, it's been a while since the last match. The matches have been very stop-start, basically since mid-November. So we had that incredible 19-0 victory in the FA Cup in the last round against Long Itchington. But that was over a month ago, on the 1st of December. Then we had another match, which was in the league against Middlesbrough, which they won. And then it seems as though it's only now that normal service is being resumed, with matches resuming on a weekly basis. Now, I'm just going to read out the table to you, Maradona, and although it's the Cup this weekend, I think it's also worth pointing out that Forest Women are at the top of the table. They are on 29 points from 11 games, but it's close at the top. So our men's opponents on Monday night are Wolverhampton, and their women's team are coming up hot and fast behind us in the league on 28 points on the same number of games. But Forest have got a massive goal difference of plus 43. Once again, as we've discussed many, many times, it is very much a case of success breeds success, isn't it? And although Forest are essentially in the third division of the women's game, having success for the women's team will also feed off success for the men's team and vice versa. And hopefully the B team can continue to bring players through and hopefully get good results and make a name in terms of proving the academy is producing good players. Success breeds success, doesn't it, Maradona?
It does. I remember back in the glory days of the sort of 80s, 90s, when the first team was doing well, the reserve team seemed to be doing well as well, and the youth team was also doing well. And I think that it just lifts the levels within the club. If that first team is doing well, it means that the players behind them have to be better, and the younger players who want to break into the first team have to be better. And I think the women's team will also benefit from just the demand for tickets as well, and the attention that the men's team gets. A lot of people just can't get into the men's games anymore. They want a taste of some live football. So I'm sure there'll probably be a bumper crowd again for this Cup game if it's at the City Ground. And that can only help them as well. It's always a bit tricky coming back after a long break, but hopefully they can continue their good form and get a good Cup run and secure promotion this season.
Yeah, absolutely. And we wish the women's team well. Obviously, regular listeners will know that we did our best to cover the women's team with our regular women's podcasts before that sort of mid-season break. We will do our best to resume that coverage as things get going. So keep tuned in to 1865 and we will bring you the latest news as best we can. In the meantime, it's time for a quick break, and coming up in just a minute, we will talk about league form, we'll talk about transfers, and we will preview the match against Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you haven't heard, AG1 is a comprehensive and convenient blend of over 70 high-quality ingredients, and it's so easy to drink. The first thing I do when I get up in the morning is add a scoop of AG1 to some cold water, give it a shake and drink. It's as easy as that, and it's now part of my morning ritual. As the new year gets underway, I like the fact that AG1 is one of the easiest things I can do for my health. AG1 contains vitamins and nutrients to support my immune system and key minerals and natural ingredients to help me maintain my energy levels and focus. As AG1 is a more-in-one supplement, it's so much simpler than stocking up on lots of different types of vitamins and supplements, and a really easy way to support a healthier lifestyle, especially as we're coming out of the gluttony of Christmas. 1 scoop of AG1 per day supports energy, digestive regularity, immune defence and a healthy mood, so I'll be ready to take on whatever 2025 has in store for me. Looking to give AG1 a shot? Subscribe now and get a free bottle of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription. Go to drinkag1.com/1865 and get started today. That's drinkag1.com/1865.
At Sierra, you'll always find apparel, footwear, and gear for 20 to 60% less than department and specialty store prices. But right now, it's clearance time, so you can save even more on everything you need to get active and outside. Visit your local Sierra store today.
You're listening to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast.
Welcome back to 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast, with me, Rich Ferraro, and him, the Maradona in the Midlands, and we're going to talk about transfer speculation because it is January, the transfer window is open again, and the main bit of speculation is essentially 1 in, 1 out, likely on loan. So there's talk from John Percy about Evan Ferguson coming from Brighton. There has been some talk in the papers generally about how Ferguson may be looking for a loan move to get going again. He is obviously young, he's big, he's powerful, he's obviously got some talent, but he's struggled over the last year or so, maybe even a bit more, because of injury and then never quite been able to get going again. Bearing in mind, we've also got a big number 9 who is being injury prone and struggled to get going again. What do you make of the potential move for Evan Ferguson?
Well, I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the season, when everybody was clamouring for a third striker to come in, I was probably I'm not to toot my own trumpet, but I think I was the lone voice to say, no, we don't need one.
Toot away.
I'm happy with the squad we got. I made the point that because of the number of forward players we've got now, we can play different formations and they can all fit in that central role. And it's difficult to keep a main striker happy if he's going to be on the bench most of the time. And I think all those points apply now. I don't think we should make any changes at all, if possible. And I was heartened to hear Nuno say more or less the same thing on Radio Nottingham this afternoon. When asked what he wanted from the transfer window, he said everything to stay the same. And I agree with him. The balance in that squad is tremendous. There's a great team spirit. They all seem to get on with each other. You've got a humble guy in Taiwo who's been happy, or not happy. He's probably not happy, but content and understanding enough to sit on the bench for the half of the season so far without causing a fuss. The Evan Ferguson one just doesn't make any sense to me because Brighton will want him to go out and play regular first team football, and anybody who comes in to Forest will know that Chris Wood is the number 1 striker at the moment. There's no dislodging him. It'll take either an injury to him or some sort of catastrophic loss of form to get into the team. So I don't think Brighton would be wanting to send him here because he won't get the game time. And also, we're one of their rivals for the European places. I can see him going to a lower Premier League team, a Crystal Palace, somewhere around there. And Everton, I can see him doing very well at Everton. Where he get a game time week in, week out. And but he's a great player. And don't get me wrong, I was very impressed with him when he first came through. And I'd love to see him at Forest, but I don't think it's realistic. For the moment, I hope he doesn't come. to be honest with you.
And you talked about lone players needing game time, and that seems to be the story around James Ward-Prowse, doesn't it? It's like West Ham will be thinking there's no point in being at Forest if he's not going to play there, and they've got their own problems, and they probably need a few more bodies around and about, don't they? So,
yeah, I mean, I'm not being as critical of him as many people have been. Okay, he's not been sort of the great impact of scoring brilliant free kicks and setting up goals. He's always come on and done a steady enough job. But if Danilo and Sangari are sort of anywhere near fitness now, you have to consider letting him go back, because you've got to prioritise your own players first. And I think Danilo is definitely a better player than James Ward-Prowse, and Sangari has the potential to be if he can get his fitness right. So it's up to him as well. He probably doesn't want to sit around on the bench either for the rest of the season. So he might want to go. West Ham, for their part, I think they might just be quite happy to keep him at Forest, just to keep the wages off the books. I don't know. They might, maybe they do need a body in there or not. But it's a cynical game, football. And if they're willing to let him go earlier on in the season, they brought in the Spanish player Soler in the summer. And he's a pretty different player to Ward-Prowse. So I think it would require a change in sort of tactics and style of football for them to sort of bring him back into the fold. And I don't know what the rules are. I can never keep up with whether he's allowed to go out on another loan. I don't know, to another club. But I'd be a little bit surprised if he went back. But I think it's just because it sort of suits West Ham for him to be here at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean, let's remind ourselves that he was brought in to cover the fact that Danilo got injured. So if Danilo is on the way back, then yeah, it may be lessons. But let's also not kid ourselves. Danilo isn't going to just come straight back into the first team when he comes back. It's going to take him some time. And what Nuno has shown recently is that with the Murillo case at the weekend, is that if there's a doubt, best leave the player to recover. So, we'll see if that has any bearings. The other one that has been mentioned in Jamie's bulletin is Alex Moreno. Now, I'm a little bit surprised to hear the idea that Forest maybe want to make that permanent, because I was kind of working on the basis that Moreno might get recalled by Villa so they could sell him somewhere else.
Yeah, they do like to do that sort of thing, don't they? And also, I can't see why Forest would want to make it permanent this time of season, unless they're desperate to bring in another lone player. I think he's not played in recent weeks, although he played very well when he was in the team, and as I wouldn't mind him as a permanent addition at Forest, but it doesn't seem to make a great deal of sense to make it permanent right now. But I don't know. Maybe there's some FFP reason, or I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'd be surprised. I was sort of slightly surprised to hear that they were talking about making it permanent right now.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it is to do with the amount of loan players you can have in. Maybe it's just to firm things up. Maybe it's something that Villa, there's a gentleman's agreement, even if it's not a contractual agreement. And certainly Moreno has been heavily involved in terms of the publicity side, all the social media stuff, the Christmas parties. So he seems to be part of the furniture at Forest. I think it's also fair to say, would you agree with me that the form of Ola Aina and Alex Moreno seems to have also helped Nico Williams to take an extra step up, because he's just been brilliant in the last few weeks, hasn't he?
He has. He's been tremendous. And I think maybe that little bit of freshness from not having played a lot of games this season has helped him as we come up against teams sort of maybe tiring towards Christmas. But the energy he shows, and he's just an all-round defensive player as well. He's improved no end from the player that first came in at Forest. He's a lot stronger in the challenge, and his positional sense is much better as well. He's been really, really good. I've been very impressed with him.
And ironically, it's defensive positioning from a much more experienced player in Moreno that I would question. So you need to have different types of players in your squad these days, don't you? So yeah. And just to finish off on the topic of transfers, Kawa Elias, who's at Fluminense. He's a very young striker. He's only played one full season. He's 21 years old, I think. Let me just double check this while I'm talking. And he is somebody who's apparently allegedly, perhaps, and he's not even 20, he's 18 years old, so he's just had one full season at Fluminense, 21 appearances, 3 goals, 2 appearances for Brazil's under-17s, scoring 4 goals. And centre forward. So if they do that, and it is another Brazilian signing, you'd imagine that's with a view to being one for the future, similar maybe in style to Eric da Silva Moreira.
Yeah, maybe. I've obviously never heard of him, so it's hard to comment. But
I was just relieved that there was a Wikipedia entry for him.
Yeah. But we've got form for bringing in Brazilians now. We've got a Brazilian enclave here in Nottingham, if you will. And yeah, I think if he looks good, if the scout who brought us Murillo, I trust him 100%. If he thinks he's good, he must be good. Let's bring him in.
Yeah, and the last sort of 18, 19-year-old we brought from Brazil with only a handful of appearances under his belt. He's turning out okay, isn't he? Let's move on and talk about the league. So Forest are indeed in second, and we talked about the Everton match with Georgia the night, and we're going to talk about the Wolves match, which is coming up on Monday. But just briefly, I mean, the Everton match is exactly the kind of game which would have been the proverbial banana skin to Forest on another season on another day.
Yeah, I couldn't see us winning there, to be honest. I was because I'm so conditioned to seeing us losing at Goodison Park. I was just expecting some to concede a couple of corners or something, some free kicks, but we just bossed it, didn't we? We just never looked in danger at all. We were more physical than them. We were more athletic than them. We were more skillful than them, and it just shows what a good team we are. We've got
Everton weren't good. They didn't do the things that, and Sean Dyche alluded to it, but we made them look very, very ordinary, didn't we?
Yeah, I mean they've made life very difficult for other teams in recent weeks. They struggle to score goals, but they're one thing they're organised and defensively strong. And we were ripping them apart. We could have had another 2 or 3 goals that day. It's just weird for us to be so good. Just knowing that you should win. I mean, looking forward to the Wolves match, we should go there and win. I mean, with a high degree of confidence, we should go there and win. It's just that old sort of nagging voice of sort of 20 years of terrible performances and horrible visits to Molineux sort of gnaws away at you. But we really should. We're a really good team. At the moment, we're the 3rd best team in the country. The 3rd best team in the country. That's like, over the last 20 years, that's been teams like Arsenal, Chelsea, Liverpool. We're that team now. It's mad.
Well, when you put it like that, it's absolutely incredible. And speaking of Monday's match, Nuno did do his press conference today. So we're recording this on Friday, and his key takeaways are to do with Forest and saying that they're enjoying what they're doing and they're living in the moment. What I hope and want is to continue performing well and making our fans happy. And as you mentioned, when it comes to the transfer window, he said, our goal is to keep our squad intact. And that is difficult because clubs are looking at all the possibilities, with us included on that. With regard to preparation for the Wolves match, he said, we have to prepare for the game. It's time to go again and ask the boys to give everything that they have. That's the idea. No stepping back. We are moving forwards. The extra time to prepare was necessary because we had a very busy schedule and very demanding and intense games against tough opponents. So the recovery time was appreciated. And hopefully that's something that will stand us in good stead, especially bearing in mind that Chelsea, they've stumbled in the last couple of matches, which is one of the reasons that Forest got up to second and are now sitting pretty in 3rd place. So if Forest can keep going and just enjoy the moment, then who knows what this could lead to.
Yeah, I've said that a few times in recent weeks on the pod, that we just have to enjoy it. There's just no pressure on us. The only pressure that's going to come is from the players' own minds now, where they start maybe feeling the pressure of keeping up those performances, and the biggest battle is going to be against their own minds. But if they can keep a clear mind, listen to the manager, do what the manager says, And that physical advantage we'll have of not having any European football, having free midweeks every week, is huge. It's a huge advantage compared to the likes of Chelsea, Tottenham, Man U, whoever else is in Europe, Villa. It just gives us that sort of golden opportunity this year just to enjoy ourselves, play with freedom, don't think about it too much, and just keep winning. We can beat any team on our day. It's nothing to fear.
We're old enough to remember 30 years ago, and we will be revisiting that season 30 years ago in our podcast feed very, very soon with some special guests. But it's reminiscent of that in the sense of it's almost as if the players have suddenly kind of realised, you know what, we can take these guys on and we are good enough, and let's just take it a game at a time and we win the games we can, and we'll keep it solid at the back, and we'll attack quickly and on the counter-attack, and we'll just play without fear. Highly reminiscent of those days, isn't it?
I think it'll be a much greater achievement really now for us to do that, because the differences in sort of our buying power and the size of the clubs is huge now.
But the other thing I will just to close up with is to draw attention to that idea that you've mentioned, which is this might be one of the best chances we'll get as well because of the changes to the European format. And you can see, we saw, for example, with Villa, that result came partly because Villa were knackered. The other teams are showing signs of fatigue, and Forest have got probably half the matches to contend with compared to the other clubs who are in those top 6, 7 positions. And even Chelsea have been feeling it, haven't they? Even though they've got their A team and B team.
Yeah, they definitely have, and it's a golden opportunity. And I've said it before, we've just got to enjoy this season, because if we do qualify for Europe next season, chances are we won't have as good as a league season next season. I think Newcastle have shown that last season, Villa are showing that this season. So just enjoy the week in, week out, winning every week for this season, and then such a boost to the city, the profile of the city, and just the self-confidence of the city to be sort of considered a European club again. Just to be standing on the same sort of level of some cities like Milan and Copenhagen and Paris and Madrid and Munich and all these other places. Just be a city that's well known throughout Europe again. It'd be amazing.
And I'm not going to name any names, and I don't want to tempt fate, but there are some people in our podcast team who started checking whether their passports are still going to be valid. So, and that seems like a nice point to leave it for this weekend. So thank you very much to Jamie for the news. Thank you, Maradona in the Midlands, for having a lovely chat with us. And thank you, listener, for joining us for another edition of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. As I mentioned earlier, we will be back with our match report after the Wolves match on Monday. We'll have another Friday 5, and we'll keep you up to date with what's going on with the women's team, and all of that is to come before the FA Cup starts for this season next Saturday against little old Luton Town. So in the meantime, we're playing the team in old gold before we play a team in orange, and in the meantime, come on you Reds.
Thanks to AG1 for sponsoring this episode of 1865, the Nottingham Forest podcast. If you haven't heard, AG1 is a comprehensive and convenient blend of over 70 high-quality ingredients, and it's so easy to drink. The first thing I do when I get up in the morning is add a scoop of AG1 to some cold water, give it a shake and drink. It's as easy as that, and it's now part of my morning ritual. As the new year gets underway, I like the fact that AG1 is one of the easiest things I can do for my health. AG1 contains vitamins and nutrients to support my immune system and key minerals and natural ingredients to help me maintain my energy levels and focus. As AG1 is a more-in-one supplement, it's so much simpler than stocking up on lots of different types of vitamins and supplements, and a really easy way to support a healthier lifestyle, especially as we're coming out of the gluttony of Christmas. 1 scoop of AG1 per day supports energy, digestive regularity, immune defence and a healthy mood, so I'll be ready to take on whatever 2025 has in store for me. Looking to give AG1 a shot? Subscribe now and get a free bottle of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first subscription. Go to drinkag1.com/1865 and get started today. That's drinkag1.com/1865.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.